everybody, I'm world runner-up Alex.
And I'm PokeKellz. Today's part 2 of our Kalos Legendary Trilogy, and where last week we talked about Xerneas, the Pokemon of life, today we're talking about its polar opposite, Yveltal, the destruction Pokemon.
Right, plus he totally looks like a tuning fork.
What?
Yeah, like, where you hit it and it's all like...
Yeah?
Yeah, remember when we all thought there might be a sound type?
Yeah, dude, Gen 6, man. Whoa, is this the last Gen 6 Dex episode?
Yep, and it starts right the heck now.
Yveltal sleeps dormant in a cocoon most of the time, an untold force of despair and destruction. But when it finally comes to the end of its life, in order to avoid death, it wakes up, spreads its wings, and absorbs all the life energy of everything on the planet. Then it just goes back into its cocoon. Isn't that crazy? That's like ultimate mic drop.
Right? And it's no surprise then that its name comes from the Old English Yvel, an early spelling of the word we now know as evil. Combined with talons, aka dangerous claws you find on a bird of prey, and we're looking at a pretty good start here, though maybe if you twist it a little, you can also hear vulture in there, which is a type of carrion bird that eats dead animal carcasses.
Legendaries are traditionally designed by Pokemon's main man, Ken Sugimori, but Xerneas and Yveltal were the first time he encountered artist block, so he enlisted the help of TCG artist and Piplup and Oshawott designer Yusuke Amura, and came back at the end just to put some finishing touches on them, which honestly, he should do that more because these guys are freaking awesome.
Yup. And from the moment they were first released, the theory behind their design was that they represented entities from Norse mythology that lived in Yggdrasil, the world tree where the 9 realms were intertwined. We agree with this theory, and this isn't the only time you're gonna see it in this 3-part series.
Above Asgard, the realm of the gods, the branches of Yggdrasil extend upward, and sitting amongst its topmost branches is a divine and nameless eagle. This eagle and the worm Nidhogg at the bottom have major beef and they're bitter enemies. Also, in some versions, this eagle is blind, an especially interesting detail when you consider Yveltal's bright blue eyes. They mimic cataracts, a condition that causes a person or animal to go blind.
Whoa, crazy! Anyway, eagles symbolize 2 things. One is strength, and as you might have guessed, the other is death. And it's literally all over Norse myths. In addition to the eagle atop Yggdrasil, there's also Odin's eagle, who is the god of death, and Hreysvelgr, a giant who can turn into an eagle. His name means corpse swallower, but just to be clear, he mostly just flaps his wings to make the wind blow.
What?
So that's it, huh? Yveltal's a Norse eagle. It's neat.
Well, it definitely is, but that's definitely not all it is.
Oh?
Yep, and we'll talk about that and more in this week's Legendary Only segment, the Pokemon...
Tuning Forks.
What?
What?
You think we're gonna do a segment called Tuning Forks?
No.
Right. So buckle up because it's time for the Pokemon creation myth, etc.
Okay, then.
So let's set Norse mythology aside for a sec and come back to something we discussed a little last week too. Hinduism, and specifically the Trimurti of Supreme Divinity, made up of the gods Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer respectively.
One of the avatars Shiva uses is Saraba, which is part lion and part bird, and it's sort of reflected in Yveltal's mane and claws. But it's also Shiva's duty to destroy all worlds at the end of creation and dissolve them into nothingness, just like Yveltal.
But before that happens, Shiva destroys on a much smaller scale, though his destruction is not viewed as a negative, but rather a necessary evil, since destruction builds and transforms life in a way that benefits the world, and only by destruction can regeneration and new life begin again.
Right. So this got me thinking about the role of Gen 6 as a whole in the Pokemon series. The Gen 6 games totally changed the look of the game with its decision to change from 2D pixel art to 3D models. Pokemon cries were changed and updated, they added character customization, mega evolution, and a host of new features that were very different from what players were familiar with, right?
Right, and if we go back to the idea of Shiva's good destruction, it seems like this might be a significant part of what I think is the fundamental thesis of Gen 6 in the first place. So when I quote this, think about that. Shiva destroys our imperfections in order to ensure progress, destroys our illusions, desires, and ignorance, destroys our old memories so that we can move on with the movement of time.
And weirdly, that's kind of what happened with Gen 6. A big destruction of what we knew of Pokemon, and in turn, the creation of a powerful new way of playing a game that was still as familiar as it needed to be. Now, can we confirm that anyone at Game Freak was thinking of all this when designing Yveltal? Honestly, probably not.
But I like to think after studying just Pokemon in depth for almost 4 years, diving into every imaginable topic and finding connections to things we never even knew existed, I feel like we learned a lot about why Pokemon exists and how they want their legacy to be remembered.
Look, As samey as these games are criticized for being, they're still never afraid to take huge risks, implement change, and purposefully throw us off because they know that the only way to be able to keep from fading away is to do that. So many games suffer from reboots that never do as well as the originals, but with Pokemon, each generation sells as well, if not better, than the last.
And honestly, again, I think that mostly this has to do with their uncanny ability to choose what to destroy and what to create. And with a new game on the very, very near horizon, I thought it might be fitting to pay tribute to the end of an absolutely wonderful gen with the fearsome yet necessary destroyer, Yveltal.
So do you think we're finally gonna get sound type in Gen 7? Or maybe light type?
What? No, dude.
What?
Haven't you been on this channel doing this with me the whole time, man? Have you been watching the trailers?
Yeah, but what if is what I'm saying.
Jeez, couldn't we just end Gen 6 with a normal battle strategy transition?
Also, go wear clothes. Yveltal is a giant, dark-flying, legendary Pokemon who embodies death and destruction, so you better believe it's gonna be going out there and whooping some serious booty in that Gen 6 VGC meta. Start with the Jolly One and Super Train and Attack and Speed.
Yveltal is interesting because even though it has protect and free attacks, it acts more like a support Pokemon than a sweeper because of how threatening its mere presence is on the field. Give it a Life Orb to turn that threat up to 11.
Knockoff is gonna be the main thing you're gonna be using because pretty much every non-mega is gonna be rocking an item, which Knockoff then knocks off and gets a power boost in the process. Use it to psych people out and keep them second guessing their every move.
In the last 2 slots, use Sucker Punch as a late game utility move and to discourage brittle speedsters, and Foul Play as an insurance policy against primals and megas with crazy high attack stats. And don't forget to use Protect generously. Yveltal's devastating, but it can't take too many hits.
But of course, that's not the only way to train an Yveltal, so as always, here are a few random thoughts.
Another way some people like to go with Yveltal is to give it an Assault Vest and 4 attacks, and then depend on its signature move Oblivion Wing to sap health as it does damage to help keep it alive. Not a bad strat, but it often gets overpowered by the sheer might of Primals and Geomancy, so only use it if you're really sure.
I would actually recommend foregoing the vest and using Roost over Oblivion Wing as a complement to the original set. It's almost like best of both worlds, except it's a little too dangerous for us to include on the main set.
And finally, for you last-minute trailblazers out there, Yveltal does also have things like Taunt and Tailwind available, but unless you've got something really clever brewing, I'd go with one of these other ideas first.
And that's it, Yveltal, the last Pokemon we'll ever do in this huge Gen 6 season.
For more episodes on Gen 6 Pokemon, click this link for a special playlist, or click here if you want to check out the latest episode of the Dex Podcast, our weekly podcast where me, Alex, and Jimmy talk about news, discuss theories, and read fan mail. Thanks for watching.
I'm World Runner-Up Alex.
And I'm PokeKellz. Now, let's call on Yveltal to destroy so that next week we can revive
the Dex.